Hello again. Welcome back to Bible Break, our 15 minutes a week where we can have a quick 15-minute or so delve into Bible truth and see what's really real about us and about our life, about our world, and about God. So we're picking up where we left off. You remember we left off at chapter 2, verse 17, where the stage was set for the story of the fall of man. That if he was to eat of the tree of knowledge, which God told him not to eat of, then that day, God said, you will die. But we're not carrying on straight with that story in chapter 3, because there's a beautiful interlude here at the end of chapter 2, which which rounds off the story of the creation, rather. And this sub-story here, which rounds off the whole story of creation, has to do with the creation of woman. So let's get straight on with our reading now. Chapter 2, verse 18. I'm going to read up to the end of the chapter in the New International Version. The Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." Now the Lord God had formed out of the ground all the beasts of the field and all the birds of the air. He brought them to the man to see what he would name them. And whatever the man called each living creature, that was its name. So the man gave names to all the livestock, the birds of the air, and all the beasts of the field. But for Adam, no suitable helper was found. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. The man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh." The man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. You may already be noticing what I'm about to mention, that once again this sub-story comes across as a rather quaint story in some ways. Looking at it, I'm reminded of the Just So stories of Rudyard Kipling. Rudyard Kipling was a famous English writer. He wrote that famous poem, If as you may recall. He was a writer that was around really at the time of Empire and at the time of the burgeoning of the literature of the absurd, writers like Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. And Rudyard Kipling, he wrote these Just So stories to explain, not really explain, it's all, he wasn't explaining anything, but just to entertain, really, with a nice sort of far-fetched story as to why things were the way they were, or the way they are. And so you get, just so how the giraffe got its long neck, how the lion got its mane, how the rhinoceros got its horn. All these stories of Rudyard Kipling, they were to do with why animals were as weird as they are. Because the point about these sort of absurd stories that Kipling told. Well, not the point of them was to entertain, but they were based upon the fact that life is pretty strange anyway. And especially as we look at the animal world, and as we look at our David Attenborough, documentary sometimes, we can't get over, can we? Just how weird and wonderful this world actually is. Well, it seems to me that the writer here, he's written this story to answer the question, how is it that men and women behave the way that they do, that they get together the way that they do? And he says in verse 24, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. It is just so, because God made it so. But maybe I've got one or two points to say to you as well, and to make to you in telling you this story as to why it is so and how it came about. Because let's face it, as with so much of this, what we read at the start of the Bible, we're not talking, much of it is to do with, as we've been saying, what deals with our experience of life, our everyday observance of things. But there are details, as we will see now, and perhaps especially in the coming chapter, where we think, whoa, I know that we're not dealing here with everyday life, at least. And as we read of the account of the creation of woman, it's clear that there's something quite obviously strange about it, but it's a quaint story explaining why things are just so. What is in the story that is of interest? That's what we need to be asking ourselves. What is there in the story that we might need to keep hold of, that we might need to retain? Well, at the very outset, we have the principle that's laid down, that it's not good for man to be alone. Now, if you're like me, you will enjoy a bit of solitude from time to time. But I, like most people, prefer generally to have a bit of company. I'm not the most sociable person, as my family will tell you, but on the face of the earth, but I do enjoy company. And it is not good for man to be alone. Man needs society. We do not need to be isolated for our own good. We need society for our own good and company for our own good. And so, animals are brought to man for him to name, but there's nothing there that he finds corresponds to his need. But indeed, God finds corresponds to his need. For Adam, we are told in the 20th verse, for Adam no suitable helper was found, because the company that Adam needed was to be somebody who would help him, and somebody obviously that would fill up this blank, this void, this hole, whereby he was a bit adrift, really, whereby he was lonely. And so God's answer is to create woman to be a suitable helper for him, which she is, because she resembles him enough for them to have a real relationship, but she differs from him enough to make that relationship all the more interesting. Vive la différence, as we say in France. So what does God do according to the story? Well, it's going to be an operation, surgical operation as such, So he effectively anesthetizes Adam and takes the rib out of his side. You may recall, I don't know if it's still around, but there used to be a feminist magazine. That was the title of it. It was called Spare Rib. And it may or may not be an interesting fact that men do have one rib less than women. But I think the point of this little detail, if there is one, is probably more profound than that. I'd be more inclined to say, or to think, that which was taken out of the side of man is very evocative in the sense that it depicts the one who should be and who will be beside him, and who he should be and will be beside in turn. In other words, the companionship will be there for which he craved. And so this happens. God made woman from the rib, and Adam looked at her and he said, "Do you know what? It feels like I'm a part of you." No, joking aside, what man actually said is, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." So he did say that, but in that way, she shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. And that sort of like, whether it's actual sort of the development of language or whether it's wordplay, but man, woman is, you've got the same thing in the original language, isha. Play on words to denote the difference, but also the closeness. That which is to be and which will be joined together as one flesh, which will become one flesh. They are the same kind, but they are different. And then we are told that the man and his wife at the end were both naked and they felt no shame. Once again, right at the end here, the stage is being further prepared for the story of the fall. But not as maybe you would expect, or as we would expect in our fallen state, by focusing upon the sexual aspect of the situation that's there at the end of the chapter. In their Edenic bliss, in their native innocence, the man and the woman were not naked, but they were not ashamed. They had no reason to be in each other's company, in each other's presence. But note that it was because of their innocence. The question of shame is not so much to do with their physical aspect, their physical appearance. It is more to do with the knowledge that comes in when they turn their back on God and disobey God. But isn't that interesting? As I say, one of the main things, if not the main thing, it could be argued that we may feel a certain shame or reserve about, since our fall wasn't actually an issue in the created order. That God made man and woman to fully enjoy all things freely, providing they do not disobey what he has said. And we will see what happens when they do that and how it relates to this question of their nakedness and shame next time as we go into chapter 3. See you then.